Pleasence and Fresh Produce.
Hey everybody, we are the co-hosts of Stuff to Blow Your Mind, and here we are with our regular Facebook Live trailer talk.
Yep. This is where we talk about some of the movies that we allude to in the podcast every week, because we always end up alluding to movies, usually horror, sci-fi, something along those lines. And this week it's going to be Subterranean horror.
But why? Because these two guys did an episode that published on Tuesday all about the London Underground mosquito. You guys want to tell the people out there what
So
this
is
is
a
about.
pretty fun episode that we did. Has to do with this reality of mosquitoes in London finding their way down into the tube system, becoming trapped there for decades and decades, and changing the way they behave, changing the way they mate and reproduce, and raising the question, at what point does this underground version of the London mosquito become a species unto itself?
Yeah, and so part of what we discuss in the episode is the process of speciation. Like, what does it mean for a new species to be created? When does Culex pipiens, the widespread mosquito, become Culex pipiens molestus, the mosquito in the tube underneath London that
That's
drinks...
the Latin term they chose, molestus?
Yeah, molestus, because it is a molesting mosquito. It bothers you. It drinks your blood. Normal Culex pipiens mosquitoes would not be interested in mammal blood. They tend to drink the blood of birds.
Really? Yeah.
But Culex pipiens molestus, this possible new species underneath London, and this is not new research. This is going back years now. But if in fact it is a new species, in whatever this population is, it drinks the blood of humans and of, say, rats, which is a fun thing to imagine if you get bitten by one of these. The last thing that proboscis went into may have been a rat king.
So London viewers or listeners, I'm curious if you've encountered one of these things before. Have you been bitten by one? Do you have rat blood in your blood mixed in because of this mosquito?
And of course, it raises the question: if you encountered one of these in a fictional, grimy New York City, would you have the chance of getting bit by a mosquito that has fed on a chud?
Which is what brings us to the trailers. So usually what we do here is we pull together trailers of our favorite monster or horror movies that are related to the topic at hand. So let's talk about Chud.
All right, this is 1984's Chud, a film about cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers or contamination hazard urban disposal, depending on which interpretation you want to go with.
The true meaning of the acronym is actually a plot point in the film.
And this is a very watchable movie. In my opinion, the weakest part of it is the Chuds themselves, because when you actually see them completely, because scenes of like claws coming out of the manhole, like that's great.
Yeah,
that's
they got
a great
decent
moment.
hands.
Yeah, lovely hands. They could have been hand models. But when you actually see the full Muppet here, it loses something.
Well, they have glowing eyes, and they have a funny roaring motion. they tend to roar. There are a lot of close-ups of them roaring, and when they roar, it's kind of I actually watched this movie last night. It has John Goodman in it in a bit part.
Really?
He's just got a few lines. He plays a cop who sexually harasses a waitress diner. A diner waitress, while she's cooking him some food.
It's a diner that's only for waitresses.
Yeah.
That's a good entrepreneurial idea.
And I think next to him is the guy who plays the coach in Mr. Holland's Opus.
Oh, okay.
But also, the main characters in this film are John Hurd, the dad from Home Alone, and...
Oh, we also have Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern.
Right, yeah.
Marv from Home Alone.
So
it's a before Home Alone reunion.
And this leads us to the whole talk that we were having pre-show. I guess I'll share this with the audience now, about the writing of this movie, because back in 2000, so 17 years ago, I was in a band and I played a show in Gloucester, Massachusetts at an art center.
What was the band called, Christian?
The band that I was in at the time was called Winter Dance Party. And there was this, so the guy who ran this art center said that he was the guy who wrote Chud. This was like his claim to fame. Like, it was like one of the first things he told us when we got to this center.
But that's awkward because the writing of Chud is confusing, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we've got, in the listings on IMDb, it says Parnell Hall wrote the original script. So I can't remember his name. So he's either Parnell Hall or he might be Shepard Abbott. Shepard Abbott was he did the story, and then Daniel Stern and somebody else went in and did touch-ups, right?
Yeah, Christopher Curry. The story goes, I don't know to what extent this is true, but what they claim and what we've read is that Daniel Stern and Christopher Curry, who plays a cop in the movie, Daniel Stern plays a guy who runs a soup kitchen in New York.
Okay.
John Hurd plays this sarcastic photojournalist who it's beneath him to do fashion photo shoots, and he's like, can't people tell this perfume smells like garbage? But anyway, so Daniel Stern and Christopher Curry claimed that they had to do rewrites because the script was so bad.
Well, my only situation with this, whether it was Parnell or Shepard that I met, was that this guy not only ran this art center for kids in Gloucester, Massachusetts, but he also lived there. There was like a large closet where his bed was in, and it was pretty interesting. Hey, does anybody out there have any questions about this? Whether or not I'm, for instance, lying about meeting the guy who wrote Chud, or any questions about mosquitoes related to the London Underground as well?
We have a dutiful social media person out here who's going to write comments on a little board for us.
So we want to answer your
we
questions
will actually
live.
notice them this time if you bring them up. Now, Joe, break down the plot a little bit here for us on Chud.
Well, okay, so it is, of course, you've got these monsters who live underground in New York in the subway tunnels. They are the Chuds, the cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, and they eat people, and they apparently have these underground worship ceremonies. There's a part where Daniel Stern stumbles upon the Chuds in some kind of praising motion. I don't know really what's going on there. They got a bunch of dead bodies and garbage, and they're kind of, this is apparently a sacred act to them. But anyway, there's a disposal program in the film where the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, they're dumping a bunch of nuclear waste and toxic sludge in the tunnels beneath New York. Meanwhile, there are these people that are called undergrounders who are homeless people living in the tunnels beneath New York, and that's where John Hurd comes in. Okay. He plays this photojournalist who's been taking their pictures.
That's like a legit thing. There's a documentary about that.
Yeah, there's a wonderful documentary by the name of Dark Days, I believe.
Yeah, that's it.
I think I want to say DJ Shadow did some work on that.
That's that's exactly the one. Yeah.
Well, I've never seen that. That sounds interesting.
It's really good.
It's fascinating.
That is the serious and depressing exploration of this reality.
Yeah.
Chud gives us the more fantastic and exploitational view of this.
Now, of course, what you can probably guess from what I've said so far is that the toxic sludge and the nuclear waste that is being disposed of in the tunnels underneath New York mutates some of these undergrounders and turns them into monsters, and then they have glowing eyes and they roar and they attack people and eat them and do their strange worship.
So this is very much like the mosquito, except it's not necessarily sludge. It's
except
making
they're
these
humans.
mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Well,
and
no, the mosquitoes would be
that's
just substitute
evolution, right?
Selection pressure for sludge.
Yeah.
Now, and we do have some examples we'll get to in a little bit where the horror movie more closely resembles what may be happening with the mosquitoes.
So are we done with Chud?
No, I wanted to talk about a couple more things about this. One thing that is funny about this movie, Christian, is that it's the kind of movie, Robert, where characters say each other's names all the time, Christian.
Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, it's a certain kind of writing that I always find particularly annoying.
Yeah.
It really gets to me. And they do it all the time. There's a scene where somebody leaves a message on John Hurd's answering machine in this movie, and they say his character's name. It's got to be 15 times in 2 minutes.
How else are you going to know who is talking to who?
It's funny because I feel like it's a writing trick. Maybe that the writer thinks if you do this, the audience will remember the characters' names better, but it doesn't work because I can't remember the characters' names.
Speaking
I
of,
just watched it.
We didn't introduce ourselves as individuals at the beginning, did we?
Oh, no.
You're Joe McCormick.
That's right.
I'm Christian Sager.
And I'm Robert Lamb.
Yeah,
Robert.
So now that we're a good 10 minutes into it, hopefully you get to know us. You can address us with your questions directly. Like, for instance, Christian, what do you use in your hair?
I've got one more comment about Chud.
Okay.
Chud is it's a part of a genre of films that are mostly in the 1980s, but really it's the late 70s through the early 90s that I've never had a name for before as a genre, but I think I want to call it the Hell City genre.
Oh, I'm getting a question coming in.
It's these movies about urban environments, usually New York, sometimes it's LA, but it's a movie set in a city where the main theme of the movie seems to be that the cities are just hell. There's just garbage everywhere. Streets are piled with trash. You've got dirty, crumpled newspapers flying up in your face every time a car goes by.
Yeah.
The sewer grates are releasing just reeking steam all the time, and there's a mugger on every corner sticking a switchblade in your eye. And do you think about this? I mean, even the Ninja Turtles kind of plays into this a little bit. And I don't know what was going on in the 80s. I guess there was just a lot of paranoia.
There was a lot of political backlash, especially in New York City, about like whether or not the city was like, clean or safe or whatever. We got a question. Are you ready? Is it true that Netflix is making a Chud miniseries?
I don't know, but I hope so.
I hope so. I really hope so. We were just talking about it before we went on air that we think
it would be a great
Chud is ready. Oh, it's Scott who asks this. Okay.
Well, thank you for the question, Scott, but I don't
I want to say something more about this Hell City concept because I think this is a great observation. And in growing up, not living in a big city, a lot of these movies were the main way that I had any insight into what a big city would be like. That there would be Chuds, that it would be Taxi Driver, it would be RoboCop.
Sorry.
And it ties in with something we discussed in the London Underground episode that I think is a part of a lot of this. Because not only is there the reality of organisms going underground, but then there's this added layer of human complexity where we have long stressed out and worried about what is urbanization doing to us as a species, as a people, and that's something that plays especially into English tales of the underground in the urban underground. And we'll get into a fantastic and classic example of that here in a bit.
So, that makes me think that we should do an episode about sort of the science of urbanization and how it affects human culture, progress, and maybe potentially also evolution, right? So, going forward, before we start on this next film, I do want to remind everybody, if you're just joining us, we're Stuff to Blow Your Mind. We're a science podcast done out of the How Stuff Works offices. I'm Christian Sager, this is Joe McCormick, and this is Robert Lamb, and we're talking specifically about subterranean creatures because we had an episode come out this week about the London Underground mosquito. Now, one other thing I want to remind everybody about, you can download that episode. You can go to stufftoblowyourmind.com and find it, or iTunes. And hey, if you're on iTunes and you're downloading it, why not just subscribe and listen to the, 700 other episodes we have?
Yeah.
Let us get in your mind.
All right, so now we're going to get to this movie that Robert's talking about.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to go back to the early 70s.
Yes.
To the London Underground itself.
Yeah, this is a 1972 film. If you're British, then you encountered this film as Deathline. If you're American, you probably encountered this movie as Raw Meat. So this one is a perfect companion piece for our episode on the London Underground. We end up talking about it a little bit because of the London Underground mosquito, because it takes place in the London tube here, and it concerns a species that's cut off from the rest of the world and begins doing its own thing, breeding-wise. So it's about Victorian tunnel laborers who get trapped underground in the tunnels.
Yeah.
And then they're just stuck down there and become just a sort of a subspecies of inbred cannibals.
That logo's great.
And we pick up in the 1970s, and there's some grisly murders, some rather uncomfortable scenes to watch. It's a pretty intense horror film. But,
Donald Pleasence.
But the big thing is you have Donald Pleasence, and he's not playing your typical Donald Pleasence role. So he's not doing the dodgy intellectual. He's not talking about killer has come to a small town or any of that. No, he is playing a blue-collar police detective, and he's pretty fabulous in it. He's this droll little the police detective, and he goes out and he gets a pint with his partner, and he's a delightful center in a movie that is otherwise kind of grisly and unsettling.
So wait, we got Donald Pleasence and Christopher Lee. Is this a Hammer film?
I don't believe it's a Hammer film.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. But Christopher Lee shows up, and Christopher Lee plays an MI5 agent in a small role.
Whoa.
And they have a wonderful scene where Lee is just being like the typical upper crust Christopher Lee type character.
Has anybody out there seen this movie? Because I haven't. Now I really want to. You've
one of those...
whet my appetite for Raw Meat, Robert.
Well, it's all out there on YouTube. You can
really?
As of this recording, you can find a complete version.
So
there.
The main thing I want to see here is Donald Pleasence playing this blue collar guy you talked about. We mentioned this in the podcast, but I just can't imagine it. I can't get my head around the idea of Donald Pleasence sitting in a pub with a pint of ale.
Yeah.
In his voice,
because he's been so
a pint of ale, please.
Halloween.
Yeah. It's a wonderful transformation, and if anyone else out there is a Donald Pleasence fan, I say pick it up.
Puma man.
But yeah, this ties in nicely with our episode because it's the exact same scenario and
in the same place.
In the same place, and as far as I know, there's no actual connective tissue there. I don't, based on when the main research about the London mosquito, underground mosquito, came out, which was I want to say the 80s, or was it?
Oh no, I think it was 1999.
99, yeah. So that came out a good bit later. The mosquitoes were around because it was during the Blitz during World War II that most of the initial attention came in, where people said, "Hey, we're going down into the tunnels, seeking shelter from the bombardment, and we're getting bitten by mosquitoes. We're getting bitten by all these other parasites because it's not just the rats and the humans that take up life in the tubes; it's also the parasites."
So before we are we done with raw meat? Are we ready for the next one?
Yeah, I don't want to risk getting turtled here.
So before,
if y'all see the Ninja Turtles come on in the background, that may be a sign
that's
we're going on
usually
a little
our
long.
cue. Yeah, it's like when they play the music to get people off stage during the Oscars. Yeah, so let us know if you've got any questions about these movies in particular, because honestly, we've seen way too many B-horror movies, but also specifically about this mosquito that is changed underground. Or, look, if you're just a listener and you're not particularly interested in either of these topics, we'll just take general questions, too, about stuff to blow your mind.
All right, Joe has the next one. Joe, this is one that you are particularly fond of.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say fond.
This is your favorite movie ever.
Exactly
is, yeah.
30 years before Raw Meat, It's Alive.
No, not 30 years. What are you talking about? 3 years.
Oh, sorry.
You messed up on an
because
order
I
of
heard-
magnitude there.
I heard
My Fermi
1999.
estimation was a little off.
That was exactly
A lot happened
yeah.
in those 3 years.
I actually
then, so.
couldn't find a trailer for this movie, so this is just a clip that our editor Ramsey here put together for us. But this is from It's Alive. No, not that It's Alive you're thinking of. Not the one with the killer babies.
Yeah, it's the Larry Cohen film.
Yeah,
right?
not that. We're talking about the Larry Buchanan It's Alive, a different It's Alive from 1969.
Whoa,
this
I saw the
is
monster.
yeah. So this monster just feast your eyes on
Wow.
this thing. Feast your eyes because it has ping pong ball eyes.
Ooh.
Larry Buchanan was big into ping pong ball eyes on monsters. He did. So Larry Buchanan was a director who was widely known as a purveyor of absolute stuff that could only dream of aspiring to the bottom of the barrel.
So this is like,
And-
he's like worse than Corman.
Oh wait,
Like,
yeah.
or not, and
This is
when I say
way
worse, I
sub-Corman.
mean lower budget.
Yes, sub Corman. Buchanan, he directed something called Zontar, the creature from Venus, which this comes up every week. It is a remake of Corman's movie, It Conquered the World, which we talk about every time we do this. So in It Conquered the World, there's an artichoke from Venus that tries to impose communism on Earth. In Zontar, I don't remember exactly how it's different. I think it's basically the same movie, but in color and maybe even worse, without Lee Van Cleef. He also did the movie that's a Mystery Science Theater classic, Attack of the Eye Creatures.
Oh, yes, and that's a wonderful, terrible film.
What do you remember from that one?
That's
I-
something that's about to come back to Netflix, by the way.
Yeah. So the Eye Creatures, besides featuring a wonderful typo in its own title card, has these I think fairly effective eye monster suits, where it's like a creature that looks like a Doctor Who creature, and it's just
okay.
eyeballs all over it, shambling around in the woods. A lot of I think
Seems
day
like
for
a
night shots.
creature that would be easy to injure.
Yeah, just be poking.
You just punch it in the eyes?
Yeah.
Are they also ping pong ball eyes?
Sort
No,
of. They're globular.
Well,
Okay.
there are multiple costumes in
Okay.
the Eye Creatures. So there's one costume it looks like they spent a decent amount of money on, and then some more Eye Creatures in the background with just like light bulbs hanging off of a black sweater.
So
Yeah.
help me out, though, with It's Alive.
So
because
It's
I'm
Alive-
wondering, how does it relate to the mosquito?
So this is a movie about a farmer who keeps a subterranean dinosaur as a pet.
Nice.
Now that
Okay,
thing you're
of course.
seeing is supposed to be a dinosaur.
It's like Betty White in
And this is
Classic.
supposed to
Survey
Classic.
says, raise your hand if you think that looks like a dinosaur.
Sure.
No.
Well, okay. So the plot is there's a snooty couple from New York with this snooty, whining husband who's complaining, and they're driving through Arkansas and Tennessee. And the husband is like, "It's hot. I hate this. You got us lost." And the wife is just putting up with her husband's complaining. And they I think run out of gas near the residence of a creepy farmer guy named Greeley.
And this is in Tennessee at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so,
I
yeah.
wonder what part of Tennessee.
See, yeah. So what the audience doesn't know is both these guys are from Tennessee. So this
Well,
this
if it-
movie's got a personal touch to
Oh,
it
yeah.
for
If
you.
it's Tennessee, Arkansas, it's got to be Western Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we're from East Tennessee.
So maybe somewhere down near Memphis. I don't even know that they have a lot of caves down there.
I don't
think
know.
Geologically speaking, you'd want to hit middle or.
I
or East
imagine
Tennessee.
this movie probably isn't heavily research based.
No, in fact, though, it does seem to be a rip-off of a Richard Matheson short story or novelette called Being, which I read part of before we came in here, and I was like, yep, it's basically the same plot, except in the Richard Matheson story, it is not a dinosaur, but an alien
Matheson
from another
is
world.
so good.
Oh, yeah.
So good. Did you know that Matheson wrote the original script to Jaws 3?
What?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Jaws 3?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's a fascinating story for another time. But yeah,
Oh.
Richard Matheson wrote the original script for Jaws 3, and then it was rewritten a bunch of times over. But you can read about it online.
Well, anyway, so in this story, this couple from New York gets captured by this Tennessee farmer named Greeley. He shows them his collection of animals. He has a zoo of animals he claims that he caught, including, I think, what are capuchin monkeys, which I don't know where he caught them. But he then takes them down into a cave to see his ultimate specimen, and then traps them there, and the goal is to feed them to a dinosaur. He also captures a paleontologist. In the end, the snooty, whiny husband gets eaten by the dinosaur. I think that's the scene we were showing there. And the paleontologist and the woman, I think they get sweet on each other, and then they escape together in the end.
That's a nice way to
Good.
meet somebody.
But the
we're getting turtles.
paleontologist. Oh no! The paleontologist says that the dinosaur is supposed to be a mosasaurus. I don't know if somebody can pull up a picture of a mosasaurus. It is not quite.
Isn't that the
we were
one
looking
from
at.
Jurassic World?
Oh, is it the thing that jumps up out of the water and eats? Yeah,
Yeah,
it could
I think
be.
it is.
But it's supposed to be a mosasaurus, the thing that you were
Yeah.
just
I
looking.
don't
So
think
we-
they researched this geologically or archaeology.
Right. We should probably move on to our next film.
Yeah.
And this, I think it's safe to say, this is actually the best film on this list. It's a movie that we love. I think it's probably one of the top 10 horror movies of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great horror movie.
I do think it's really good.
But before we get into it, just a quick reminder of who we are. We are Stuff to Blow Your Mind, a podcast. We do science and weird horror, basically. And every Friday we do a trailer talk where we talk about something related to the science topic that we've covered this week based on horror movie trailers. Yeah, it's totally all right. Our producer Ramsey is pulling up an image right now of a mosasaurus, and it
Okay.
is in fact, or at least it looks like, the monster dinosaur from Jurassic World.
Yeah, but that is not what we see in It's Alive.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
See. Oh,
there it
there- oh,
is. It's
movie
right
ahead.
behind us. Yeah, if you all remember this from Jurassic World, this is the creature that's like in like an orca tank basically, and it's like the secretary or somebody or like a personal assistant.
They have that horrible scene.
yeah.
Yeah,
where
she
you
gets
just, that's one
Jurassic
of
World,
the worst moments. Of the
a
film.
movie that I think is worse than It's Alive.
Oh, shots fired across the bow.
Challenge me out there
I
if you
agree
disagree.
with Joe.
I
That
could
movie
not
made me
hate that
so
movie more.
angry. Yeah.
Jurassic World also to me fits the perfect definition of Roger Ebert's concept of the idiot plot, the movie that is only made possible by characters making impossibly stupid decisions at every turn.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Does anybody out there like Jurassic World and think we're jerks for hating it? Because I'm curious about that.
I think some
it
people
did really well.
I think that I've talked to people who are like, "Hey, you go into it, you expect a big dumb dinosaur movie, and they gave you big dumb dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's
what are you
true.
complaining
I'd
about?"
be okay with that if it was a fun kind of dumb. That
Yeah.
movie had a mean streak.
Yeah,
in it.
I
yeah.
agree.
It was a very cynical, nihilistic movie. Okay, hey, let's get into a great movie. Let's talk about good movies. The Descent.
2005.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Oh,
this was
is
the
such a
same
good
guy
movie.
who directed that movie Dog Soldiers.
Yeah,
right?
Neil Marshall.
Yeah.
And he directed 2 or 3 really key episodes of Game of Thrones.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
good.
I have a story about when I went to see this movie.
Hit us and hit the audience with it.
I went to see The Descent in theaters when it came out in 2005, and about 15 minutes into the movie, I was really digging it, and the projectionist turned off the movie. I think they
That's the
thought there
worst.
was nobody in the theater. It was
Yeah.
very sparsely populated.
Was
in
it
there.
just you by yourself?
No, it was me and a friend of mine, maybe a couple other people. And
Okay.
that was it. And so, like, the movie turned off and the lights came on, and somebody had to go get the manager, he came and apologized to us, but they had to start it over from the beginning, and the whole time we're waiting for it, they're just playing Nickelback.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's 2005 for you.
Exactly.
Man, but The Descent is so good, and it is definitely a story about underground mutation.
I tell you, one of the great things about it, and certainly, there's the biological aspect here is key, but these are all fake caves. And they did such a wonderful job, I think, of making those fake caves feel real, make the spaces feel tight and claustrophobic.
Yeah.
It does not feel like a Star Trek Next Generation cave set.
So
The lighting in this movie is phenomenal.
The movie, it has great creatures in it, but I would say the scariest thing in it is not the creatures. It's scenes of like crawling through tight spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we see some of it here in the trailer, like the way that the light is like kind of red, reflecting off of this like grimy water that they're floating around in. Yeah, it's just it's a beautiful movie. It's a smart movie. I really like it, and some people don't like the sequel. I like the sequel a lot as well.
I have some problems with the sequel. I don't think the caves.
The caves don't look as great.
Yeah, and I don't want to trash on a film. We have plenty of cool stuff.
Well, we've
to talk
already
about.
trashed on Jurassic World. So let's talk about this in relation to the Mosquito, right?
Okay.
So there's some specific kinds of mutations that are in the Descent.
Well, okay, so in the Descent, we're seeing a situation where we have like a humanoid species that I think it's implied they may have been trapped humanoids when they run across the old caving gear.
Okay.
But one thing to keep in mind here is that while the mosquitoes of the London Underground are trapped down there, they're not getting out for the most part, and they're preying exclusively on subterranean prey.
Well, and one of the things we do discover is that when they do get out, they don't tend to survive very long outside because they're ill adapted now to life on the surface. For example, they don't know how to, or not know, biologically, they do not know how to hibernate for the winter, how to go into a seasonal diapause, and so cold weather comes along, bam.
So they are probably, it's hard to say because you have basically three ways to classify troglofauna, or creatures that live underground.
So this is real science.
This is real
coming
science.
at you.
So you have troglobites, and these are obligate cave dwellers. They're so adapted to darkness and the caves that they can't survive outside of their subterranean homes.
Okay.
Then you have troglophiles. These are cave-dwelling creatures that complete their life cycle in the cave, but they can also survive above ground. I think it's kind of a toss-up as to where you want to throw the classification of the London Underground mosquito, because it can survive, but there are a lot of limitations on its ability to breed with surface world mosquitoes. And then you have the troglozines, and these are creatures that use caves for shelter, but they don't complete their life cycle there. Bats are a great example of this. And I think the Descent monsters would be this as well, the crawlers, because we clearly see they have to come out of the caves to get deer or amateur spelunkers. Well, I guess the amateur spelunkers are like home
Come to
delivery.
them. That's delivery, yeah. But
That's-
they do have to go. They go order out to get regular fauna from the forest.
Yeah.
And you see there are these mountains of bones inside the cave.
Yeah.
So okay, you know what? Hold on. We've got a comment coming in, and we're about to transition into another film here.
Okay.
Have we pretty much covered The Descent?
Yeah, I think we're done with the Descent.
All right, before we get into this other film, though, I'm thinking that this is like a great classification system that you've presented us with. We should apply it to the next film as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we got another question coming in here.
what's
Hold
happening
on.
here?
Okay, Marshall asked, he saw a movie just like The Descent when he was young, and there's a group of cave explorers. They find albino humanoid species that wipe them out, and he can't recall the name of the movie.
Huh.
This is definitely
From
ringing
Marshall.
a bell.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Because that does have a wonderful subterranean humanoid race.
That
they
is
worship
true.
a bomb, yeah.
That is true. Is it the time machine? Because that's
what we talk
where
about
we're going
next.
next. I don't know, Marshall. I'm sorry. That is, maybe it was The Descent 2? I'm not sure.
No, I mean, if it was before The Descent.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
That's interesting.
I want to know what it is, though, because I'm always up for an
Yeah, I'm
underground
curious.
humanoid
Marshall,
film.
if you are able to remember it, please let us know in the comments. Because by the way, everybody, we are going to go back into the comments after we're on air here, and we'll interact with you there later on, too. So
Thrills.
this isn't a one-time thing, but here we are.
isn't it great when movie trailers back in the day would just say thrills?
Yes.
Remember,
The
murder.
Time Machine, based on the wonderful book by H.G. Wells. And we're here to talk about the Morlocks.
So
Yes.
So are Morlocks troglazines, troglophiles, or troglobites?
I think they are troglobites. They come up to
they
capture.
do come out,
They
yeah.
So that would make
Okay.
them troglazines, I guess.
Wait, hold on, I'm getting something. A suggestion
Cave?
for Marshall's movie, The Cave. It's possibly The Cave.
Could be.
I don't know that movie. Have you
it?
heard of it?
We'll have to look it up after.
Man, now I feel humiliated that between the three of us, we can't come up with this movie. Okay. Anyways, back to the H.G. Wells stuff.
So I remember when I was a kid, I saw part of this movie of the 1960 version of The Time Machine on TV, and I thought the Morlocks in it were terrifying.
They are, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I watch it now, and they look pretty
they look-
funny.
Oh, if these things came for you, you would be terrified.
I think there's a direct link, though, between this movie/book and The Descent.
Yeah.
Clearly, The Descent was influenced by the idea of the Morlocks.
And just the book itself gets into what we talked about earlier, that fear about what urbanization was doing. I mean, that's that's core to H.G. Wells's book, is that what are we doing to our society with the way that we're structuring things, the way we're structuring production, the way we're treating our workers, and what the upper class is doing in comparison.
Yeah.
Right, and so what we find out in the book, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, I haven't read it in years, but I think I recall the details right.
It's great. It holds up, and it's
Yeah.
like 10 pages long.
Yeah.
It's the shortest book.
There's
read
like
it.
there
like a
is
Wikipedia entry.
divergent human evolution, essentially,
Okay.
where humanity splits into a couple of species. One are these people who live on the surface of the earth, and they're all kind of beautiful and childlike, but they're very docile and not very smart. And then there are these creatures that live underneath the ground who are, somebody says, how about alien?
Alien is a topic unto itself.
But yeah, anyway, these creatures that live under
They
the
are
ground,
technically cave miners. Anyways, go ahead.
they are the Morlocks, and what they do, we find out is, at first, the time explorer, the guy who goes forward into the future, thinks, are these creatures intelligent? We find out they are.
Yeah,
They are the intelligent species.
They're
and
running. They're keeping everything going.
They maintain the machinery that sustains the life of the creatures that live up on the surface, but also they eat the docile creatures that live on the surface.
Oh, and by the way, this is the year 802,701 CE.
So the
kind of a long
question
time
I
in the
have to
future,
ask
yeah.
of the audience and of you guys is completely unrelated to science or really this movie. Anybody out there familiar with this new TV show, Time After Time, that is based on the film Time After Time about H.G. Wells' time machine? Jack the Ripper steals H.G. Wells' time machine, travels to present day, and goes around New York City murdering women, and H.G. Wells has to travel to the future and stop him.
Well, the original
Wait,
film is a
H.G.
classic
Wells?
because, yeah. Well, see,
Him, the author?
yeah, the author himself has the time
Okay.
machine.
As it operates under the premise that H.G. Wells actually built a time machine.
Yeah.
Oh, I
in
see.
the original film, I want to say Malcolm McDowell played H.G. Wells, and David Warner, the ever-villainous David Warner, played Jack the Ripper.
Wow, I got to see that.
And somebody played the love interest that was really good as well. It's a wonderful film.
The film's great. The TV show looks real bad, and I'm curious if anybody's seen it. And maybe I'm wrong. We're getting something in here. Marshall found it. He says, "What Waits Below" is the name of that movie. Oh, I gotta
never
check
even
that
heard
out
of that.
now.
Look it up.
Okay, man, What Waits Below?
No, I think
Sounds
they got
interesting.
into a legal battle with the creators of What Lies Beneath. But
Maybe. All right, so we are actually on. Oh no, we've got two more. We're on our last
We've got
movie,
one major
and
one.
then we've got a classic TV show episode to end with. So movie-wise, Tremors. How could anybody forget about 1990s Tremors?
So when
yeah.
we announced we were going to do this was suggested by our friend on Twitter, Dr. Claw MD. Thank you for the
Oh yeah,
suggestion.
Dr. Claw. He does a cool show about cartoons, a podcast about cartoons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, it's got Bacon, Kevin Bacon, got Fred Ward, it's got Reba, it's got guns, the desert.
Benedict Wong's in this too, right?
Is
Yeah,
that
I
right?
think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's giant killer underground worms, subterranean worms. One of the
Not
cool...
Benedict Wong. I'm sorry. The actor from Big Trouble in Little China and The Last Emperor.
Oh, yeah.
Who played Egg Shen.
Yeah. I can't remember that guy's name.
Oh man, tremendous
can't
actor. It'll
Yeah.
come to me in a few minutes, then I'll
So
shout
the guy
it
who's
out.
also in Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's blanking on his name. I'm sure
Well,
someone will remind us here. But
For me, it's all Reba. So
Yeah, Reba.
Reba McEntire's in this movie, and she plays like a lady who's a gun nut. Or She and her husband, And
Michael Gross is her husband, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Michael Gross, who is in, we've got Ninja Rap going in the background. Michael Gross is in the movie Cool as Ice, the Vanilla Ice movie.
This is a terrific film. I put this up with The Descent, not in the same category as The Descent.
Well, it's a comedy horror.
It's a comedy horror film, and I think it is successful at every turn.
Man, Fred Ward.
It actually kind
so
of
good.
It has a kind of interesting mechanic in that you could imagine for an underground predator, in that they don't have eyes. The worms
Right.
that attack people in this movie, I believe, called graboids.
Yeah.
They don't see you. They hunt by hearing and by vibrations, so they hear your footsteps on the ground.
Look at Kevin Bacon's hair.
Yeah.
It is magnificent.
Pretty immaculate.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, we got a comment coming in here.
Victor
Hold on.
Wong,
Victor
not Benedict Wong.
Thank you
yes.
very much. Victor Wong.
Yes.
The great from Big Trouble in Little China and Prince of Darkness
Yes.
and many others.
So, of course, one of the central things, one of the other reasons we remember this film so much is that the monster is just fabulous. It's just
Yeah.
a terrific
Great
monster.
creature design
Yeah,
in
they
this.
give it just enough science to where it feels realistic, but they don't go too overboard in telling you where it came from or how its life cycle works.
Though they
save that for
debated in the
sequels.
movie. I like that Fred Ward, I think, suggests in the film that they came from outer space.
So
He
help
said
me out here.
subterranean monsters
Aren't there
from
like
outer space.
6 or 7 sequels and a TV series, and Michael Gross is in like all of them?
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I heard recently that they're bringing it back with Kevin Bacon.
That was what I heard
Wow.
recently. I haven't heard
Yeah.
anything. I haven't heard anything recently to
Man, so many Tremors, so little
fulfill
time.
me on that. Yeah.
So, okay, so this is somewhat related to the mosquito, although since we don't actually know its origin, it's difficult for us to say, but we can speculate.
Right, and I actually did speculate on the origins of the Tremor, the Tremor graboid. I wrote an article for HowStuffWorks.com a while back called "How the Tremors Graboids Work," and so my theory, I basically had
Oh
a
my
little
God,
fun
I'm in
with
its
it.
mouth.
I basically had a little fun with it and tried to, line it up with what we know about evolution. And so
Yeah.
basically what I came down to is that graboids probably date back 400 million years in the fossil record to the Devonian period.
Now, why do you think that?
Okay, so we're looking at Nevada and that area
Yeah.
of the United States. Devonian Nevada was a rich environment of river deltas and estuaries dominated by fish, invertebrates, and early amphibians.
Okay.
So the idea here is like this creature could have originally been an amphibious creature.
Yeah.
An aquatic graboid ancestor may have enjoyed a steady diet of delicious prehistoric morsels, but then disaster happens, right? The environment changes. Instead of getting locked away in a subway tunnel, its environment begins to dry out. So beginning roughly 374 million years ago, a series of late Devonian extinction events, possibly caused by severe carbon dioxide depletion, wipes out 70% of all invertebrate species, and in time the landscape transforms into the desolate Nevada landscape that we know today.
Leaving them trapped underneath.
Yeah, leaving them trapped underground. So
Okay.
maybe that's the evolutionary history of this creature and how it ties into this idea of species getting trapped somehow and then changing to adapt to this new environment.
Yeah.
I like it.
I buy it. I think you did the work. I think it's there. Let's get on publishing that in a peer-reviewed journal. All right, we've got one last one, but before we get into it, I do want to remind everybody, if you're just joining us, or if you've been with us and you're maybe going, who are these people? We
Who
are
are these
Stuff to
gods
Blow
of
Your
men?
Mind. We do a podcast about science and weird oddities. This is Joe McCormick, I'm Christian Sager, and this is Robert Lamb. And look, this is all about an episode that came out this week that we did on the London Underground Mosquito. You should definitely check it out. It's on iTunes, it's on Google Play, it's on Spotify, everywhere that you can get your podcasts.
And if you're not subscribed, hit that button.
So now, let's go to the classic, the one that everybody thinks of when they think of subterranean creatures.
Yeah.
Fluke Man.
Because it doesn't get any more subterranean than the bottom of a porta potty.
Right, he comes up through the toilet, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is from the classic X-Files episode, The Host.
Now, Christian, you and I did a couple of episodes last year about the science of the X-Files.
And we talked at length about the Fluke Man,
and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that, but I love X-Files in general. So last year, my wife Rachel and I were watching the X-Files for the first time, And we would get into this pattern where when we just watched an episode, we would start singing the theme song of the X-Files to describe what had just happened in the episode. Da, 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 you know?
Yeah.
And so with the Fluke Man, I remember afterwards we were wandering around the house going, "He comes to bite your butt."
Now, I feel like I've asked you guys this before because I am not an X-Files expert. I've only ever seen 2 episodes. This episode, which I loved, and then the Invisible Elephant episode.
Oh, that is one of the worst episodes.
And
The Invisible Elephant
That's like
episode.
a bottom 3.
What is that episode called? It's like Synchronicity something.
Can we get the Fluke Man up here?
Yeah, he's coming up.
So my question is, I'm just amazed that they never brought this character back. They never did Fluke Man Part 2 and 3.
Not that I recall.
They did in the new series, didn't they?
What?
I think that there was in the latest series, I want to say there was an episode where they called back to Fluke Man. I don't think it was like an actual sequel, but it was sort of like this was like a relation to the Fluke Man.
I love he looks like a toilet paper mummy that got wet, and all the toilet paper is like soaked down, and then he's also got really chapped lips.
Well, we should give them the premise if they've never seen this. So there's like a Russian tanker that's disposing of nuclear waste, and
it's always nuclear waste.
This thing grows inside of it somehow from tapeworms. Is that right?
Well, I think it's a fluke worm.
Oh, duh.
Yeah, it's a fluke worm that somehow melds with the DNA of a human being, and it creates this creature that lives in the sewage system and comes up through the toilet to bite your butt and infect you.
And they dump some of the toxic waste. It gets out. It gets into a city's sewer system.
Oh, gross.
A guy, multiple people are bitten by it, but one of the main guys who's bitten by it, who we're about to see here, in the shower, he vomits up its offspring, right?
Oh.
And they slither down the drain. And then it's implied later on that even though Mulder kills the original Fluke Man, that there are others that are growing out there.
Oh, you gotta love it. Any good scene that involves
here we
someone
go.
barfing up a
It's
monster.
barfing up Christian.
This is a great, I am the Fluke Man spawn.
Or you're you're our censoring element here.
See him down there?
Too grim.
That's pretty nasty.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily evolution underground. It's evolution in a Russian tanker full of nuclear waste.
And this actually calls back to our recent episode on atomic monsters. That we did a monster. We did a trailer.
As does Chud.
Yeah, as does Chud.
Yeah.
So you kind of get into the same ground, like all these artificial things that we're creating or building, and then what does that do to the shape of life?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've hit it, guys. I think if anybody out there has any more questions, please let us know. Now is the time. We'll do a little Q&A. If not, we'll come back later and we will interact with you on Facebook. But while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'll just remind you, this is Stuff to Blow Your Mind. We do a podcast. You can download that on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you like to get podcasts. We have got all kinds of content on StuffToBlowYourMind.com. Not just podcasts, we got videos galore. Robert does a series that is wonderful related to this called Monster Science.
Yeah, and a little blog series called Monster of the Week where I kind of explore different monstrous tie-ins. So I did a recent post like that about Deathline, raw meat that we talked about earlier.
And if you want to find out just more in general about what we're working on, keep following this Facebook page because we publish everything here, whether it's articles, whether it's podcasts, or videos that we're producing. We're always working on something weird.
All right.
Do we have any questions? Anything coming in?
All right.
No?
Doesn't seem so.
All
but
right.
we will see you possibly next Friday for, I think that next Friday, we are going to talk about sex robots.
I believe so. So if in the meantime, if you have some favorite sex bot movies, let us know about them. We will be taking this concept apart a little bit and discussing certainly some of the sleazier visions of this we've seen in cinema and some of the more positive visions that might actually come to life.
And you might ask, why are you going to talk about this? Because we have a podcast episode where Robert and I dive into the science behind sex robots in current society. And that'll come out probably next Tuesday or Thursday,
I think
right?
next Thursday, yes.
Okay.
What we're looking for.
Yeah, so well before we do another one of these. In the meantime, say hi to us on Facebook, leave a comment, a like, a smiley face, an angry face. Have a good day.
Bye.